The history of beer is as long and varied as the history of civilization. When human beings stopped hunting and gathering and began to settle to raise grain, that's also about the same time that they started drinking fermented beverages, which loosely can be defined as beer or ale. So some people really do believe that civilization, in terms of human beings stopping and concentrating, partially was due to the fact that people had a taste for this fermented beverage. Now, throughout history, the earliest that I know of for there being a written recipe was, I believe, 3000 BC. There's an actual written recipe for beer that traces to that. Beerstone has been found on ancient vessels, so we've been drinking beer pretty much since we've been around. So going from that and into where we are now is a long and varied process, but long story short, beer used to be produced on a very small scale, individual, small groups. A lot of the brewers traditionally were women, and as time went on, there were different things that happened in society. The monasteries in Europe started becoming a prime producer of beer, and they still are to this day. Some of them, date back to the early, 1600s. Beer started to become produced on a more wide scale, throughout as time passed. People began to concentrate, their skills and make it such that fewer people produced the beer, but produced more beer for more people. And that just continued along with the Industrial Revolution and different technologies and knowledge of beer. Some of the times when beer was able to take a big step forward were, for instance, when they figured out what the role of yeast was, and that was, Louis Pasteur. Then that gave them something to play with in terms of changing the outcome of beer. There were, different times when people revolted because the quality of beer was very low, and that, they really had a revolt and built a new brewery, brought a whole new brewer in. And then, really it's just the industrialization and trade, so you had different styles of beer mixing with different cultural aspects of different places. To produce the beers that we have now, we have really wide breadth of styles because we draw from all over the world in terms of how beer exactly developed in each specific place. So now we turn to the time where we have very big breweries producing a lot of beer, and we're actually kind of turning back towards smaller producers where we want more regional beer. We want there to be more difference in terms of specialization. And that's how we got to where we are today in terms of the history of beer.